Hello and welcome back to yet another Mech Deck Tech. Today we have a really fun build for you built around Go-Shintai of Life's Origin. So this is obviously a Shrines deck. We could go enchantments in general. Though we have a fair bit of enchantment support, we're really focused on these Shrines. So this is a 5-color deck. We're going to play every single Shrine we can, which is all of them. And we're going to have a good time doing it. But before we get into that deck, we're going to go over our sponsor, Arcane Fortress, makers of TCG accessories including deck boxes, sleeves, binders, and playmats. There is a link in the description down below to save you 5% on all of your purchases, which also helps out the channel. Let's get started. So, Go-Shintai of Life's Origin. 4 mana, 3/4. Wooburg and tap them lets you get an enchantment from grave back to field, and whenever they or another shrine enter, you get to create a shrine token, effectively doubling the number of shrines you have, which is nice because every shrine cares about, well, how many other shrines you have, right? The more the merrier. Let's go over those shrines and what they do. We're going to start with the Go-Shintai of shrines, which are the only creature shrines we have access to off the bat. We'll start off with Ancient Wars. This is a mono red shrine for 3 mana. It's a 2/2 with first strike. Beginning of your end step, you can pay 1 and deal damage to a player or planeswalker based on the number of shrines we control. Boundless Vigor. This is a 1/1 trampler for 2. It's in mono green, but at your end step, you can pay 1 and give it a +1/+1 counter for each shrine you control. Again, you're going to see there's a theme here. A lot of, for each type of effects. Hidden Cruelty's up next. This is a mono black shrine, 4 mana, 2/2 with Death Touch, and at end step we could blow up a creature based on toughness relative to number of shrines we control. That leads us down into our Lost Wisdom, which is a 0/4 flyer for 2 mana, which is going to let us mill anybody we want at our end step again for 1 mana based on the number of shrines we control. I don't think we have enough shrines, or will ever have enough shrines, to make this a viable mill strat to kind of win via milling our opponents out, but with Go-Shintai, we're happy to kind of mill ourselves, throw some shrines in the grave, and cheat them back. Last of the Go-Shintai shrines is Shared Purpose, which for 1 mana at our end step is going to let us create some spirits. They are a 1/3 Vigilant shrine in white. That's going to drop us way down into our enchantments that are not creatures, starting with the Honden of series, right? So we're starting off with Cleansing Fire, which sounds like it's burning, but it's actually gaining us life, and that's going to be 4 mana in white, 2 life at our upkeep for each shrine we control. Infinite Rage follows up. This is 3 mana in red. It's going to deal damage again at upkeep based on shrines to a player or creature. Life's Web is a little expensive at 5 mana in green, but is going to create us a little spirity boy, again, for each shrine we control, leading us into Night's Reach. So Night's Reach is back at the 4 mana mark in black, and forces discard at our upkeep based on shrines. And my personal favorite, having been playtesting this all week, is Honden of Seeing Winds. So this is our blue boy. They're going to draw us a card for each shrine we control, and our 5 mana. But, they kind of curve out perfectly. Commander, bam. Next turn, Seeing Winds, bam. That's going to draw us 4 cards on the following turn and really keep our hand nice and full. After that, we are going to move into the Sanctum of, right? So we're starting off with the Sanctum of All, which costs Wooburg to get out. But at our upkeep, we can look for any shrine in either our deck or grave. If we look into our deck for it, we are going to shuffle. But we're going to cheat those bad boys out onto the field. Also, as a nice little passive, hey, one of your shrines trigger. Do you control at least 6 shrines? They trigger twice, you silly. And we're here for it. Sticking with the Sanctum of names, we have Calm Waters. So this is another draw effect. So this is pre-combat main phase, which works really well with the Sanctum of All triggering at our upkeep. And it's going to let us draw X cards where X is the number of shrines we control, and then we discard a card. That card could very easily be another shrine because, Go-Shintai of Life's Origin is going to let us cheat it back, as would the Sanctum of All. Fruitful Harvest, right? So 3 mana in green, ramps us based on number of shrines. It's only going to give us 1 color, but if we have our Sanctum of All, we could get double that mana and in up to 2 colors. So, big ramp, we're kind of here for it. Shattered Heights. So this is the red Sanctum of, and it's going to deal damage to a creature or player based on the number of shrines we control. Leading us down into Stone Fang, nice and cheap, 2 mana. This is a Drain Shrine, right? Each opponent is going to lose life equal to the number of shrines we control, and we're going to gain that much life. Leading us into our final shrine, which is Sanctum of Tranquil Light. So, we have all of these shrines. They're not enough to win on their own, right? They're definitely not a full deck. I think there's like 17 or so total. But how are we going to really push it? Well, a lot of enchantment support. We're going to start off with the Composer of Spring. Composer of Spring is a chef's kiss in this deck. So this is a 1/3 Satyr Bard for 1 and a green. It is from Modern Horizons 3, and it has Constellation, which means it cares about enchantments entering the field, right? Which means if Go-Shintai of Life's Origin is on the field, and we go ahead and cast ourselves a shrine that resolves, we're going to get 2 triggers off of this. So, whenever an enchantment enters the field under our control, we could cheat a land tapped from our hand onto the battlefield. If we control at least 6 enchantments, which in this deck, not a problem at all. We have a ton of enchantment creatures, we have a ton of shrines, we have the shrine tokens, which are also enchantments. Instead, we could cheat a creature onto the field. Granted, that creature is also coming out tapped. Kind of big sad about that part, but that's okay. We don't necessarily mind. Because if we're playing any of the Go-Shintai shrines, bam, those are creatures. They're enchantment creatures, which, whenever they enter, is going to trigger Go-Shintai of Life's Origin and give us another 2 triggers. Just a ton of value there. Doomwake Giant. So Doomwake Giant is an obvious include in this deck. They are a 4/6 for 5 in mono black. Whenever any enchantments enter the field under our control, we are going to -1/-1 every creature our opponents control. And it's very easy, especially if we have the Composer of Spring combo kind of out, to really just slam out a bunch of damage to all of our opponents. Speaking about not caring about casting, we are running the Eidolon of Blossoms. So this is a 4-cost 2/2. Whenever it or another enchantment enters the field under our control, we get to draw cards. Again, working really well in tandem with that Composer of Spring to keep our hand full of more and more enchantments that we can kind of just slam out onto the field for big damage. Entity Trackers. Actually very similar to the Eidolon of Blossoms, only it's not an enchantment itself. But this is a 2/3 flashable human scout in blue. It has Eerie, so it technically also cares about rooms. We're not really playing any rooms in this deck. We're here for just the fact that it cares about enchantments entering, right? War card draw. So again, Go-Shintai's Life's Origin's out, Entity Tracker's out, we play another shrine, we draw 2 cards, and we get to really churn through our deck and see more cards, which allows us to take more actions, which means, odds are, we're going to win. Ghostly Dancers follows up the Entity Tracker, also from Duskmourn, right? So 5 mana, flying 2/5, which is already fine. Whenever it enters, we could take an enchantment from our grave and return it back to our hand. Then, whenever any enchantments enter the field under our control, bam, we get to create a 3/1 Flying Spirit. Hannah Ship's Navigator, one of the very few cards that are actually multicolored in this deck. Despite the fact that it is a 5-color deck, most of the individual cards are actually monocolored. But for 3 mana, we get a 1/2 who we could pay the same exact mana cost and tap down to return an enchantment from grave back to hand. Heliod, the Radiant Dawn, follows them up. So this is a 4 mana 4/4. We could transform them for 3 in a Phyrexian blue to turn them into a 4/6. Whenever they enter, they're going to return a non-god enchantment from grave back to hand, and if we transform them, they let us cast spells at flash speed, and spells cost 1 less for each card an opponent has drawn this turn. Mesa Enchantress. So like her a little less than the Eidolon of Blossoms or the Entity Tracker, because it only responds to casts, but more card draw is always good. Moonblast Cleric is a tutor for us, right? We're going to tutor any enchantment we want from our deck on top of it, and, basically get to draw it the following turn. Sanctum Weaver. So Sanctum Weaver is a mana dork based on the number of enchantments we control, which in this deck should always be a pretty high number. Satyr Enchanter. Much like the Mesa Enchantress, is going to respond to us casting enchantments, so We're not getting the double trigger that we're getting from some of these other cards, but card draw, again, is always good. So Teslan Champion understood the assignment, and that was to trigger twice, right? So a 1/3 for 3, whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, they're getting a little bigger, and we're getting to draw a card. Two things we love. Sithis Harvest Hand, right? This is a 1/2 for 2. Whenever we cast an enchantment, we're going to gain a little bit of life, which is cool, and draw cards. Verduran Enchantress follows them up. 3 mana, 0/2. Whenever we cast an enchantment, draw a card. We're just here to draw cards all day, every day. Weaver of Harmony is actually kind of chef's kiss in this deck, right? So it says, other enchantment creatures we control get +1/+1. We actually have a lot of enchantment creatures in the deck. And for a green, tapping them down, we can copy the triggered ability of another enchantment we control, which could draw us extra cards. It could deal extra damage. It could do extra drain. You know, it could do extra mill. Like, the world is our oyster. Wildseer Scouring Maw. So this is a 5-cost 6/6 trampler that makes it so every enchantment we cast from hand has Cascade. So we're going to get a lot of value out of this. Some of our enchantments are a little expensive, others less so. But either way, the ability to kind of like dig through the deck and get extra value is always nice. Brilliant Restoration is going to follow that up. It is admittedly expensive, right? This is 7 mana, right? Nothing to sneeze at. But it does return all artifacts and enchantments from grave to battlefield for us. So if someone did a big enchantment wipe that wasn't exile, we really get to just get a bunch of effects triggering all at once. Dance of the Manse is in a similar spot. This is an X spell, so the overall cost could be kind of high. I think at its highest for us, it would be 7, but it's going to return up to X target artifacts and or non-aura enchantments from the grave to field. If X happens to be 6 or more, we do also turn those things into 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. Idyllic Tutors. This is a 3-cost tutor for enchantments. It will go to hand, which is kind of nice. Open the Vaults kind of falls in line with the Brilliant Restoration as well as the Dance of the Manse. It does cost 1 less overall, and it's going to return all artifacts and enchantments from grave to battlefield under their owner's control. So, you know, it's helping everyone else out as well, but I think it's still worth running. Redress Fate. So Redress Fate, again, is a way to be like, hey, quit destroying our things, especially if we're doing the self-mill, right? This is like a really nice way of being like, haha, look at all these things I actually cheated back. So it's normally 8. We could Miracle it for 4 if we like happen to draw it at like the opportune moment, but I think it's worth playing regardless. I think the last of these effects we have is Resurgent Belief. So you suspend it for 1 white for 2 turns, and then it does the same thing, where we're going to return all artifact cards from our graveyard, or not artifact, enchantment cards from our graveyard back to the battlefield. Moving down into the enchantments for more enchantment support, we have Enchantress's Presence. Whenever we cast an enchantment, we're going to draw a card. Sigil of the Empty Throne. Casting enchantments now grants us 4/4 angels. Sphere of Safety, which is effectively a ghostly prison type effect where people have to pay mana to attack us, but that mana value is equal to the number of enchantments we control, which on this kind of a board, in this kind of a deck, is going to be a lot of mana, and basically guarantees that as long as it's on the field, we're not getting attacked. Last up for the straight up enchantment support, we have the Sterling Grove. So it gives all of our enchantments other than itself Shroud, making it so no one's going to mess with them. Now you might be thinking, Mech, it's a lot of different colors, fair number of colored pips. How are we paying for all this? Well, let me tell you. We have quite a few cards in the deck that are going to make it so all of our lands are going to tap for any color. We're going to go over those quickly. And then, for once, because we almost never do this, we are going to touch on the mana base. And I feel like the mana base, being budget, which is important for us, is going to still allow us to hit all of our colors on curve. We're going to start off with that Dryad of the Elysian Grove, which is an enchantment creature, which is always a nice little plus. They're going to let us play an extra land every turn, which is also nice, and all of our lands are every basic land type, meaning they will tap for every color. Enduring Vitality follows that up. They are a 3/3 vigilant creature in mono green. All of our creatures, including these shrines that we're creating from Go-Shintai of Life's Origins ability, are going to tap for mana of any color. And if it dies, it's going to come back as just an enchantment if it were still a creature. Fey Burrow Elder. I think they're a must include in basically any 5-color deck. They are a 0/0 naturally, but at the very least they're a 2/2 because they themselves are 2 colors. But they're going to get a +1/+1 for each color among permanents we control, and they're going to tap for mana equal to the number of colors we control. So a good way of being like, hey, here's Wooburg, we could use them to immediately activate Go-Shintai and cheat a thing back from grave to field. It's a good time. Circuitous Route. So Circuitous Route is, at least this copy that I have up, is from Foundations. It is 4 mana. It does a lot of search for up to 2 basic lands and or gates. Bam, we nailed it. We're doing gates as our land type. That's going to give us all of our colors, which means we're also going to end up running Maze's End, but more on that in a little bit. So this is going to let us grab 2 gates, put them on the field tapped, one of which is, assuming we don't already have it on the field, always going to be Gone Gate, which makes it so our gates enter untapped, making them just super strong. In a similar vein, much cheaper, we have Open the Gates, which is going to let us look for a basic land or gate and put it into our hand, then shuffle. Again, if we don't already have it on the field or already in hand, it's going to be Gone Gate, right? There's a ton of gates out there, and we're running all of them. Moving down into our artifacts, we're obviously running things like Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, as well as Chromatic Lantern. So Chromatic Lantern isn't a card that I run in most of my decks. I think that the color fixing on it is fine, but I'm not a big fan of 3 mana rocks in general, but I think in this deck, it makes a ton of sense, right? 3 mana, it's going to tap for mana of any color on its own, and makes it so all of our lands tap for mana of any color. Jumping down into the enchantments, we are running Leyline of the Guild Pact. So Leyline of the Guild Pact is going to come out for free if it's in our opening hand. Each non-land permanent we control is all colors, and our lands are every basic type in addition to whatever other types they happen to be. Meaning, bam, we have all of our colors. And with the Fey Burrow Elder, oh, is he already all 5 colors? Will he automatically tap for 5 mana? Yes. We're also running Spelunking. I really like Spelunking. We're not running any caves. I don't know that anyone cares about that cave part almost ever. Maybe there's a cave deck out there. Are you running a cave deck? Let me know in the comments down below. But for 3 mana, it's going to enter, it's going to draw us a card. We can cheat a land from our hand onto the battlefield. If it happens to be a cave, we gain some life, but we really don't care about that. What we do care about is the fact that our lands now enter untapped. Getting down into the lands, like I said, we are doing a gate build to ensure that, you know, 1, we have access to all of our colors, and 2, we have a nice alternate win con if we want to. So 23 of the 36 lands in this deck are built around gates, which means the majority of our lands are gates. The other lands we're running are the cheap tri-lands. They don't have necessarily the types, right? They're not necessarily forest, plains, island per se, but they do tap for all 3 colors, and they naturally enter tapped, but with things like Spelunking, you know, to also keep them untapped, I think we're okay. But guys, that is the deck overall. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it's sometime in the near future we'll be able to see some of these decks in action. But what other kind of content would you like to see from me? Like, I know I'm known for the deck techs. I think the deck techs are great, but I don't really get to express a lot of my personality through these deck techs. I feel like they're much more informative than entertaining per se. Would you like to see set reviews? Just Magic news in general? You know, let me know in the comment section again down below. But as always, I'm Mechanized Minion, the Energy King. This episode, as all of them are, is brought to you by Arcane Fortress, which once again, there is a link down in the description to earn you 5% off any purchases from them, which helps to support the show. Of course, you don't need to buy anything to help support this show. You don't need to spend your money. You can simply like, comment, subscribe, share the video with your friends, watch the videos, you know, on mute in the background, whatever you want to help us out. But until next time, good luck with your builds.